Is the Senate going to pass a health care bill tomorrow? Do you know what's in it?
It's a good question. What happens is the Senate will take the bill up. Hopefully they'll take the bill up, and then they're going to have a whole bunch of amendments. And so it's impossible to determine the final product of the health care bill coming out of the Senate because of all the different amendments that they're going to consider. But obviously, my hope is that the Senate gets health care done. The House passed our repeal and replace of Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, in May. So we have passed our bill in May in the House. We've been eagerly waiting the Senate to get their work done. This is a promise that we made to the American people. You have to remember, Obamacare is failing. This law is collapsing. Premiums have doubled. Insurers are pulling out. Blue Cross Blue Shield pulled out of Wisconsin this year. 4 out of 10 counties in America, they're down to 1 health insurer left in the exchanges. A whole bunch of counties in America have 0 health insurers left in the exchanges. That means people aren't getting access to care, let alone affordable care. We think we can replace this law with one that works, one that gives people a chance of getting actual comprehensive health insurance at a better price with lower deductibles, and also making sure that people with pre-existing conditions get coverage. But we can't do that if the Senate doesn't pass their bill. And that's why it's really important that the Senate gets this done this week. I'm very hopeful that they will. And then we want to get on with tax reform this fall. And that's why I'm here talking with the people at MillerCoors.
Wisconsin Hospital Association has come out against both the House and Senate bills. Have you heard their concerns? And
I have heard their concerns, and their concerns, many of which revolve around cuts that Obamacare placed in Medicare. This is not a Medicare bill. This bill doesn't affect Medicare
there are a
at
lot
all.
of concerns about Medicaid, though, and Wisconsin's unique
I'm
situation.
confident that our Medicaid, by the way, there are a lot of things that we do in the House bill and the Senate bill that actually gives Wisconsin more flexibility and actually more Medicaid funds. Remember, Medicaid spending is going to increase. That's not the question. It's also going to give state more flexibility to craft Medicaid to work for our state. No 2 states are alike in healthcare, especially in Medicaid. New York versus Wisconsin, on and on. Giving Wisconsin the ability to craft a Medicaid solution that works for our citizens is, in my opinion, the best thing to do. Yeah, I'm just gonna, let me just raise, let me do that.
Any thoughts on Jared Kushner's testimony today and what will come of it?
Don't know much about it, only that I know, I think it's Senate Intel Committee, so we've got, this is just an ongoing part of the investigations. There's a House investigation, a Senate investigation, the special counsel. These investigations need to run the full course, follow facts wherever they are. In the meantime, in Congress and the House, we're working on people's problems. We're working on fixing problems. We're doing appropriations this week. We have passed so many different bills focusing on people's problems, whether it's overhauling the Veterans Administration, increasing border security, or regulatory relief that we've passed to make a difference to help businesses grow.
Speaking. Yeah. Why is the administration trying to pull funding that goes to help homeless veterans, the 2 homes?
Yeah, that's a good question. Mike Gallagher and I are very concerned about this. Both the Grove, Union Grove, and King are excellent facilities. We were a little surprised at this announcement. That's why I've asked Secretary Shulkin to give us some answers to these questions, and we're trying to get to the bottom of that. Somebody over here?
So what's the timetable for tax reform, and do you think the Senate's on the same page as the House?
Yeah, the Senate is on the same page. We meet weekly between the House and the Senate on tax reform. We're going to pass the ball on to our tax writers this week to close the differences on tax reform. But what we're doing right now between the House, the Senate, and the White House is getting on the same page on tax reform. So this fall we can launch tax reform to get this done this calendar year. Our objective is to get tax reform done, which is a tax cut for American workers and families, this calendar year, so that when we roll into 2018, we can actually get faster economic growth. I don't think you can get the kind of economic growth potential that we could get in this country, like 3% growth, if you don't do comprehensive tax reform and a tax cut for American workers and families.
Mr. Speaker, so the candidates who are running against you next year say that the increased disability that you had in Wisconsin in the last few weeks show that you're nervous about them. Is there any?
Actually, I've been doing this all along. I'm just getting more attention for it. As you know, I live in Janesville. I live here. I commute every week back and forth. My family still lives. I live on the block I grew up on. I do all sorts of different things to make sure that I'm in touch and communicating with constituents. I was touring flood damage in Kenosha County just this week down in Silver Lake and Wheatland. I do frequent telephone town halls. I just did Walworth, Racine, and Rock County recently. I do office hours, so if constituents want to talk to me, they just schedule a meeting, they come and do my office hours. Not to mention plant tours like the one I'm doing here and plant town hall meetings. What I'm not interested in doing is giving a forum for protesters to be bussed in from out of the district and out of the state to try and disrupt and have a screaming fest. That's not going to get you a civil conversation with constituents. That's why I've been doing everything I could possibly do in a creative way to have good interactions with constituents, whether it's touring flood damages, telephone town hall meetings, office hours, and the rest, So everybody knows I'm Paul, I'm a Wisconsin guy, I'm lifelong, and I haven't changed. Yeah, Bill.
Russian sanctions bill, do you expect its passage and its signing by the president?
Yeah, I expect its passage. I haven't seen the rest of the stages, but we have been spending the weekend negotiating the Russian sanctions bill. We want to make sure that when we do the Russian sanctions bill, that we sanction Russians and not Americans. And there was a policy change that needed to occur, so we didn't give an unfair advantage to Russian oil oligarchs. So there was a policy issue that needed to be dealt with, not to mention a constitutional issue with respect to how bills get written into law. I think we're getting very, very close to fixing those differences. So I do believe that we'll be able to get a Russian sanctions package to the floor pretty darn soon.
The president tweeting.
Oh, hang on. Go ahead.
Speaking about jobs, 1,300 jobs here. What do you know about Foxconn? That would bring so many jobs here to Wisconsin. Do you have any insight on will this?
I do, and stay tuned. I do, and stay tuned, and I'll let the governor, who's been the quarterback of this Foxconn negotiations, give you more about that later.
The president tweeting something like, "It's very sad that Republicans, even some that were carried over the line on my back, do very little to protect their president." Is that detrimental to Republican efforts to do tax reform?
No,
and healthcare?
we're kind of used to the president tweeting different things. This is just sort of par for the course, and this is just sort of how the world is these days. What I focus on is what I can control, and that's my own actions. And what we focus on in Congress is solving people's problems. That's why we're focused on executing and passing this agenda. What is this agenda? More jobs, faster economic growth, fix the problems of the Veterans Administration, stop hollowing out our military, get the economy growing, improve national security, improve economic security, get people from welfare to work. These are the problems that people asked us to work on. That's what we're focused on.
Can I ask a question? Are you going to sample any beer here?
I did last night at home.
So it's all going well. So it's all going well with the agenda. I mean, you're 6 months in. Your constant refrain is the House has done its job. Chuck Schumer is in opposition. He only controls so many votes. So how are you doing 6 months in? And should the base be upset that you haven't done more?
Yeah, well, I think what the base doesn't know is what we've already done. I mean, the base. Let me give you an example of this bill. The day Jim Comey was testifying in the Senate, the House passed its repeal and replace of Dodd-Frank. It's a pretty darn impressive bill to help save community banks in Wisconsin and the rest. We have passed more bills in the first 6 months of the Trump presidency in the House than under the Obama presidency, the Clinton presidency, both Bush presidencies. So we've actually executed much of our agenda in the House, and we've actually gotten a lot of good things done in law. But again, the Senate is a different kind of a legislature. They don't work on a pure majoritarian basis. They work on the filibuster, and so that has been frustrating to us. The other frustration to us is that the Democrats in the Senate have been slow walking, populating this Trump presidency with their needed personnel. And that's been extremely frustrating. That's one of the reasons why the Senate is focusing on getting that done. But I am encouraged with the fact that we have passed so much out of the House that makes good on our promises. And when we pass a bill, we send the baton over to the Senate, and they're working on it. My hope is that the Senate keeps its promise on health care like the House has kept its promise, so we can make good on that and save people from this collapsing law. And then on this fall, we're going to move on to tax reform because we think that that is absolutely critical for strong economic growth. Look, I'll just finish with the same point I made in the beginning. Miller's a perfect example. You got 1,300 really good paying jobs right here in Milwaukee because of Miller. But Miller is an American business, and Miller is taxed at 35%, and the rest of the world is taxing their businesses at an average rate of 22.5%. Canada is at 15%, Ireland's at 12.5%. And so when we tax our job creators at much, much higher tax rates than our foreign competitors tax their job creators, that puts American businesses at a competitive disadvantage. We want American businesses to win and succeed in the global economy, and that is why we're so focused on cleaning up this tax code so we can get faster economic growth and more jobs. That is a problem that needs fixing, and that is what people expect us to do in Congress, and that's why we're focusing on their problems. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.